The Fertile Crescent is a region in the Middle East. Hey, sorry again. Oh.
Yeah.
The Fertile Crescent is a region in the Middle East known for its crescent moon shape and characteristically moist and fertile land. Today it is known as the countries of Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine, and Egypt. The biggest region of the Fertile Crescent would be Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is a land in and around the Tigris and Euphrates River and the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea, known as the Levant. The earliest recorded settlers of Mesopotamia were said to date back to 10,000 BCE. They were some of the earliest human civilizations responsible for the birth of writing, commerce, the wheel, and above all, agriculture. They developed a system of irrigation that allowed crops to grow systematically, thus birthing the beginnings of urbanization and architecture.
The city of Ur. Ur was situated in what is now southern Iraq. It was a powerful, wealthy city. In fact, much of what we know about ancient history in general begins at Ur because it is here that archaeologists have found large collection of clay tables. In the early Bronze Age, people started to write things down, record history, and keep track of laws. The ziggurat in this city was surrounded by other public buildings, with all enclosed by a double wall. A big mausoleum called building, the Royal Cemetery of Ur, was located just outside of the wall. The content of this cemetery later give archaeologists a clue about just how prosperous Ur had been. Here they found the remains of chariots, harps, and jewelry. They also found the bodies of people who have been killed so they could be buried with dead as companions. Main residents were located beyond this enclosed area. Ur's harbor saw a lively ship trade on Euphrates. The ziggurat of Ur. Ziggurat were seen by their builders as a link between heaven and earth. These temples were built by Sumerian farmers who worked on them between planting and harvesting seasons. It took millions of mud bricks to form these enormous structures. The, builder, the builders formed the bricks in the large rectangular with inward sloping walls and a series of platform steps. Sun-dried mud bricks were very strong, but they were all porous, which meant that they would not hold together very well in the rain. To add waterproofing to ziggurats, the builders created another set of bricks that would be more resilient in bad weather. This second set was fired in a kiln and then stuck in front of the mud brick as protective shell. These buildings were placed on raised ground to provide protection from the floodwaters that were such an integral part of life in the region. Babylon, an architect-minded king. After the last Sumerian king was overthrown by foreign invaders, Mesopotamia was divided into independent city-states. Among them was a group of people from Arabia who established Babylon as their capital. Babylon is considered by many to be the greatest of all ancient Mesopotamian cities. In part because it was the first product of thoughtful, deliberate city planning. Constructed more than 260 2,600 years ago in biblical times, the gorgeous city in what is now Iraq straddled the two banks of Euphrates River and was protected by a wall that circled the entire perimeter. Ishtar Gate, another fruit of Nebuchadnezzar's inventive, was the Ishtar Gate. The third 38-foot tall gate was placed at the main entrance to the city and dedicated to goddess Ishtar, who was the reigning goddess of fertility, love, war, and sex.
No.
Some of
My
the blue
friend's
glazed
phone.
bricks
And I
bore yellow and
um,
white motifs of animals such as
Perfect turn white.
lion, bulls, dragon,
Long.
and
Like
orok,
6 months.
to show
Yeah.
honor to the
The fourth moon.
deities, including Adad, the god of weather, and Marduk, the chief of god of love. The original Ishtar Gate. Many years ago, European archaeologists packed up many of the mud bricks and artifacts and brought them back to their home country. Among the relics they took was the original Ishtar Gate, which was sent to Germany. It is now on exhibit at the Berlin Museum of Ancient Near East. The Hanging Garden of Babylon. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, long considered one of the seven wonders of the world, were another part
I
of
do.
Nebuchadnezzar
Had friends in there.
his plan to make Babylon beautiful beyond all other
Yun
cities.
naman.
These were series of roof terrace and had man-made irrigation. The garden could be accessed through the palace. Mesopotamia was extremely dry, so it would have been a major undertaking to keep the gardens watered and healthy. Water would have needed to be brought in front of Euphrates constantly. Some historians believe the irrigation system involved a slave-operated machine that stretched from the gardens to the river, dunking buckets into the water and carrying them up to a reservoir in the garden terrace. Imagine how beautiful and exhausting this lush green must have looked in this clay colors.
I knew what to do, right? Pyramids. Mastabas were single-story trapezoidal structures, precursors to the pyramids. In the mastaba, the body was placed in a sarcophagus and then buried underground in a single chamber. In another room at the ground level, the statue of the deceased was placed. A third room was for receiving mourners who would come bearing gifts and offerings. Families would add chambers in which to bury additional family members. The Pyramid of Khufu. The Great Pyramid of Khufu is the largest of the three and covers 13 square acres. The base makes a perfect square. Even though it stretches out over so much land, the ground was leveled so precisely that there is only a 1-inch margin of difference anywhere at the entire base of the structure. The four sides are exactly even in size. What is even more incredible is that the relation of the length of each side to its height is the same as the relation to a circle's circumference to its radius. Since pi had not been discovered at that time of the Great Pyramid's construction, this relationship is likely just a coincidence. In any case, the pyramids were a triumph of architecture and geometry that continue to amaze. The Sphinx, the statue of an enormous human head situated on top of a lion's body, crouches near the pyramids of Giza. The statue possibly represents the pharaoh Khafre. The Sphinx head is surrounded by a head cloth similar to Pharaoh's traditional costume, and it faces the sun, suggesting an identification with the sun god Ra, also characteristic of an Egyptian royalty. Temples. In the later centuries of their civilization, Egyptians built a number of elaborate temples where people could come and worship the gods. People were not really supposed to enter the temples, but instead stand near them and watch processions of priests and royalty from the outside walls. Since only the priests and pharaohs were inside, their interiors and what went on in them were shrouded with mystery. The structures were often constructed using post and lintel system. The columns were carved to resemble organic forms such as bundles of papyrus reeds. These temples were called pylons because of the two big sloping walls that formed the entrance. Mycenaean civilization. Cyclopean construction. Mycenaean civilization, a precursor to classical Greek civilization, flourished between 1600 to 100 BCE during the Bronze Age. The Mycenaean walls were enormous, up to 24 feet thick and 40 feet high in some places. They were so big that when the Greeks happened upon them, they believed that they had been built by giants or cyclops. Their confusion inspired the word Cyclopean to describe construction with massive stones. Lion Gate. There were a number of gates and entrances in the Mycenaean settlement, but the front gate, called Lion Gate, was the most imposing, a product of post and lintel construction. It was built with upright, very plain stones, with a 14-ton lintel lying across the top of them. The top of their gates was corbelled arch, consisting of stones laid on top of each other progressively until they met at the top to form an arc. Corbelling. Corbelling was a very popular Mycenaean architecture. This building technique was used to create not only arcs, but also roofs for circular tombs. Megaron. Most Mycenaean cities centered on a large palace complex called the Megaron, which translates as large room. The Megaron was a rectangular shape with three-part sequence: porch, vestibule, and a domus. This layout was the precursor to the ancient Greek temples that would become some of the most inspiring architectural structures in the history of the world. That's it.
Okay.